Hey, money nerds. Today we are talking about things that I personally do to build wealth that don't necessarily look rich from the outside, but very much contribute to building up a sizable net worth. So let's dive into some of my favorite tips that I personally incorporate into my own life. One of the greatest things that I have done for my own net worth is living in my starter home. Here in the United States, especially, we are very much committed to the idea that you buy a starter home, you live in it for a few years, you fix it up maybe, and then you sell within 5 to 7 years and you move into a bigger and better home. And it's one of these things that I think is so interesting because the way we are choosing to live is actually not conducive for that life anymore. Family sizes are becoming smaller. Housing is insanely expensive. So the idea of just moving up into a different home strictly because somebody says you should, or we think it's a good investment when really, when we run the numbers, it rarely is. It just doesn't make sense. So one of the things that I personally have adopted and live with is that I am comfortable in my starter home for now. Now, this doesn't mean this is my forever home. I'm never saying never. I will not say that I will never move into a different home. But for now, this house is such a huge blessing. And I really do believe that. And I hate saying this too, because it comes from such a place of privilege where so many people can't afford rent hardly, let alone a house payment. But I did purchase this house when I was 19 years old. It was in 2008. This was a great opportunity because the market was going down pretty significantly. And so I was able to purchase this home, moved into it, rented a couple rooms out to my friends, did a house hack when I was in college, and it really helped me cover my house payment. So the reason why this house today is still a blessing is because my house payment hasn't changed much. Yes, it's gone up over the years because things like taxes and insurance, and that will increase or decrease your mortgage payment. But as a whole, this house has been such a huge blessing, and I am really grateful for the ability to not be so short-sighted to think that I need to be into a different home just to prove a point or to feel a certain way or just have more space. I have been very content here, and it served me incredibly well. Okay, the next thing that I do often that does not necessarily look rich, but I am very proud of is driving older cars and not consistently upgrading. When I was in high school, I don't know if I've shared this story too much, but when I was in high school, I financed a car. Now, yes, if you're wondering how did a high school student finance a car, my mom did cosign, which financial, no, don't ever do that. That's really never a good idea. But that was my situation. That's how I got into this car. When I was financing the car, I think I was paying $120 a month, which for a high school student back in the day was a lot of money. It felt like a lot for sure. I remember I was driving that car and it had a weird noise that kind of sounded like knocking. When we bought the car, the dealership told us it was totally fine, not a big deal, not a cause for concern. So naively, stupidly, I listened. And that car motor ended up fully blowing. Not just like I had to do a little repair, it was a full motor. And it was kind of crappy because you still have to make those car payments no matter what. So I was still making my car payment on a car that I couldn't even drive and had to save up for a new motor. It was horrible. It was horrible. And then I remember I financed another car when I was in college, and that was the last of it. I've never financed a car since then. I don't intend to. Again, I guess never say never, but to me, the math doesn't usually make sense. I would rather just buy a reasonably priced car, drive it into the ground, sell it for a couple $1,000s and then move on. So that is something that I have been very proud of and has really saved a ton of money, especially when the average car payment is nearing over $700 for a family. I can't imagine how anybody can truly get ahead financially when you have a really large house payment and a really large car payment. I just don't see how the math makes sense long term. You might be okay in the short run, but when you want those options and you want freedom, that money is gone. And so that was something that I didn't want to deal with personally. So it's a small decision. It's actually a really big decision, but it works for me. It works for my family. However, I will say if you do need to finance a car, my general rule of thumb or recommendation is to never finance something that's more than 10% of your take-home income, because if it's more than that, it's going to take away your chance of building wealth. Okay, another thing that I've done over the years that has helped me build up wealth and increase my net worth over time is reducing the lifestyle creep and inflation as much as possible. control. Now, this is a tough one because in today's world, we are constantly being marketed to. We are constantly watching even subtle marketing where you might watch a YouTube video and then pretty soon you're tempted to go buy stuff. It's everywhere. In general, my day-to-day living is very, very little. I take a lot of pride in that because I'd rather my money go towards things that matter a lot to me. So eating out is fun. I enjoy it. I don't enjoy it more than trips. I don't enjoy it more than having a net worth. I don't enjoy it more than knowing I can put money into my daughter's 529 and she can go to college for very little or free compared to what I did when I was a kid. It's not about necessarily saying I don't enjoy this. It's saying I enjoy this side of it even more. And when you truly understand those opportunity costs and you understand that every single thing that you purchase, you're inherently saying no to something else, it's easier to make the right decision for you in the moment when you really get clear on your priorities. And so that lifestyle inflation and reducing it has helped me tremendously. And I do agree that money is meant to be enjoyed. I fully am in support of that. I just think sometimes we try to enjoy money in so many areas that we take away the things that actually do make us happy and truly do build wealth. And that's investing for your future in some capacity, paying down debt so you have some breathing room and you have cash flow to go do the things you enjoy, spending on experiences. These are all things that are so important that oftentimes these death by a thousand cuts, the coffees, the eating outs, the shopping, the add to carts, it takes away your ability to invest in the things that matter most. Another thing that I do that doesn't look rich from the outside is I do not invest in luxury items. Not generally speaking, I will say there are certain cases where I probably would invest in certain luxury pieces, but I don't buy designer handbags. I don't buy expensive cars. I'm not doing name brand stuff. I just do not do that. And mostly because I don't find a ton of value in that. There's certain things that I will spend some money on, but generally speaking, luxury items, I find you're paying for the brand. Now, I'm not saying that you should never do that. What I have personally decided for me is that it's not a huge priority at the moment. And it hasn't been for the past maybe 15, 20 years. But at some point, it might be, I don't know. But at this exact minute, it's not really important to me. And that idea of having luxury things to look like I made it or have my stuff together or just buying into a brand name that may not actually be luxury, but you feel like it is, it's just not that interesting to me. Another thing that I'm not really interested in at this exact minute is really expensive private schooling. I think sending your kid to a really expensive private college or a private school that is highly unattainable from a financial standpoint, but you're stretching your budget and you're making it work because you're trying to do best by your kid, I feel like that is a trap. And what happens so much is that people can't afford these things. So what they do is they're taking away from retirement, they're taking away from their future. And then what happens is their kid will graduate from college, but you were never able to prioritize your own investing in your own retirement. And in some cases, it ends up falling on your kids to pick up the pieces. And that's just not something I want to do. So I have kind of drawn a line in the sand that says I may invest in private education for my daughter, but it's not going to be at the detriment to my financial ability. If I cannot invest money for retirement, for her future, for general purposes, because of her private education, I know that that's a financial problem. Sometimes that gets a little controversial and I don't really understand why, because it is just a numbers game at the end of the day. And it's unfortunate and I hate that we have to pick and choose, but we do. At the end of the day, to me, building wealth is about making choices and it's about understanding seasons of life. There are some seasons where you may not be able to invest quite as much because you are maybe living on one income, or maybe you're saving up for a bigger purchase and so you're not able to invest as much as you normally would, or you're in a debt payoff journey and that's requiring you to live very frugally. But after that, you want to buy yourself a designer handbag as a way to celebrate. There's nothing wrong with this. When you're approaching a wealth building scenario, you have to understand that it's all about the trade-offs and it's all about seasons, and knowing what season of life you're in is going to help you make the right decision for you in that moment. I personally am someone who is working towards Coast Fi. Coast Fi basically means you have enough money invested as a nest egg that you don't necessarily have to invest more, and you can kind of sit back and let that money grow and compound over time to help you reach your financial goals. When Tony and I were running these numbers for us, we are very close to Coast Fi. We're not quite there yet for the style of life we want in retirement, but we're getting very close to that. And it's a really exciting thing to see that I only have to invest $200 a month from here on out for me to really hit my financial retirement goals. That's a great feeling to have, and I want that for you too. But the only way you get there is by making smart decisions, saying no to the things that are not overly important, but feel urgent and important in the moment, and saying yes to the things that matter most, which is you being able to retire with dignity, you being able to have lifestyle flexibility and not have to worry about money ever again. That is the true goal, and I want that for you too. When we talk about wealth, really what we're talking about is people want the flexibility and the freedom to do what they want with money when they want, but more than anything, they want to control their time. That is the true indicator of wealth, is when you have that time freedom and you don't have to worry about how your bills are going to be getting paid. You have officially made it, my friend. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and more than anything, I hope it inspired you to maybe rethink an area of your life so that you can start to figure out how can you start to build more wealth in a way that fits for your life and you get excited about. All right, that's it for today. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Money Nerds podcast.